Ladies and gentlemen, hey, yo, it is the week of football showdown slates, 2-game slates. We have another one on Thursday Night Football. Fellas, welcome into the holiday week. And this is a fun little project that we have for you beautiful people today. This is a fun project that we have for the beautiful people watching this today because there's a Tuesday game and because your boy's flying out on Wednesday, the salaries have still not dropped for Thursday Night Football, but I think it's a good experiment. The normal stuff that I usually do in terms of research, putting notes together. I have 5 pages of notes just for the Thursday night game that I'm going to be referencing throughout this video. I think it will be a good experiment to get out there my thoughts before the salaries come out and before the market reacts to that. Now, what does that mean, Mr. Sal Vetri, Mr. Orange Hoodie Poppin' Sal Vetri? What it means, if there's a player that I know that I like, and then the salary is a little bit more expensive than I was willing to pay before that, but everybody else reacts that way, there's a guy I know that I like, and he's now coming in lower owned because he's a little bit more expensive. And if there's a guy that I'm like, wishy-washy on, and he starts to become high owned, I can get away from it. So I think this is a fun experiment, and we're going to start up top. We're going to go through the San Francisco 49ers and then the Tennessee Titans. So up top with Jimmy Garoppolo, he's coming off of maybe his best overall performance, 10.2 yards per attempt. I mean, that 49ers offense just breeds the CJ Beathards, the Nick Mullins, even though it's a little bit of a skewed stat because of the yards after the catch guys that they have out there. But on the season, 245 yards per game, as you can see, on 29 attempts per game. This team does not throw the ball. They're 27th in passing attempts per game, so this is not a situation where I think Jimmy G is going to have a massive game. I'm banking on a nice price point below $10,000, maybe for both quarterbacks here, and if that's the case, I'm going to lean to go to Jimmy Garoppolo over Ryan Tannehill, and we'll tell you why when we get to Tannehill and how poorly he's been performing, but expect a low-scoring game here. Like, this game does not have a good total. We are looking at a 44.5 total where the favorites are going to have a 3-point spread and a 23.5 implied team total, so this is not a great game environment by any means. I mean, if you're looking at Jimmy Garoppolo right now, he's only top 30 attempts one time since week 9. It limits his upside dramatically, but you got yards after the catch guys there. You know you're going to have the play action game opening. If we're comparing quarterbacks for the slate, if you're looking to choose one, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is the one that I would lean to. Now, the running back situation in San Francisco is an interesting one. Elijah Mitchell did not miss last week, according to Kyle Shanahan, because of his concussion he's been dealing with and missed the previous week too. It was because his knee had some inflammation in it. That's not great. That's not great for this rookie running back, the 6th-round pick. So we'll have to track that. It is now a short week for San Francisco. As of the Monday estimated injury report, he did not practice because of that knee injury. So track that stuff. If Elijah Mitchell is out there and he finally can get healthy in these next 2 days, well, then we're going to go full Elijah Mitchell. He's been playing 66% of the snaps this year. He is 4th in the NFL with an 80% opportunity share. When he gets out there, he just takes back this role. He perfectly, similar to Raheem Mostert due to that speed and their ability to get to the edge, he fits this Kyle Shanahan run blocking, zone running scheme a little bit better than a Jeffrey Wilson or a JaMychal Hasty. But that being said, as of my recording of this later in the day on Tuesday, we have still not seen the man practice. And if that is the case, and if we can get a Jeff Wilson who is not $9,000, who is not in the upper 8K range, but 7K range, hopefully even cheaper than that, I think you just have to go to Jeffrey Wilson if Elijah Mitchell misses, because they've been shown to just go to one guy, right? And Jeff Wilson this past week played 88% of the snaps. He was that one guy out there playing 50 of the team's snaps. He had 21 carries on the ground, broke the 100 yards, was one of the few running backs to actually get you there, was a nice leverage play off of James Robinson this past weekend. This was by far his best graded game of the season so far, and he saw 21 of the 24 running back touches if you're not going to count Deebo Samuel as a running back, which I guess you can for 6 carries, but if you're talking about the exact running backs in the backfield who saw touches, 88% opportunities. He's now seen 60% of the snaps the last 2 games. He's the clear RB1. So if we get a nice price tag, I mean in the 6 or 5K range, that's amazing. I think it'll be probably in the 7K range. That's where I'll take it. Again, if it's a lot more than that, this could be a situation where I like Jeff Wilson if there's no Elijah Mitchell. I expect 15 plus touches for a team that wants to run the ball, right? Their 4th highest run play rate in the NFL is the San Francisco 49ers team. So if Jeff Wilson comes in at like 8,500 and it keeps his ownership lower in that range, well, this is my original thoughts, and then we can see where the market reacts. The other running backs in the backfield, I can't get interested in JaMychal Hasty. In week 15, he only played 3 snaps, right? He ran 1 route. He had 1 carry for 13 yards. He's seeing just 4 total opportunities the last 2 weeks, and that's with a little bit less usage for Deebo Samuel in the backfield, and that's with no Elijah Mitchell. So I can't really get excited about JaMychal Hasty. I can't even tell myself a narrative of where he starts to get involved more. Of course, if Tennessee gets up by 20, JaMychal Hasty could get involved more, but even then it could just be passing more to George Kittle, the wide receivers, and Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback. Juszczyk, who saw 53% of the snaps, is a much better play than JaMychal Hasty. I assume he'll be higher owned. I'm hoping Juszczyk isn't like a $4,000 play. If he's in the 2K range, he's in play. Low 3K range, it starts to get, I'd rather go to a kicker, right? But 2K or $1,000 range, use checks in play. I mean, he has 5 games this year of 7+ fantasy points. That's solid. Like, if you're a $2,000 player and you're going to get a 7, 8, 9, 10 fantasy points, that's solid. And he's not just doing it on touchdowns. Those help, of course, but he's also doing it on the fact that he can catch some passes. Now, he's only seeing 2.9 opportunities per game and 16.6 yards per game, but it's those games when they get down and they're trailing that he sees 2 or 3 receptions. They're favorites in this one. They're not expected to get down by 2 touchdowns, which would make them have to throw a little bit more. That being said, he at least has to be in play if he's one of the $2,000 options. So those are the San Francisco 49ers running backs. And now we'll get to the wide receiver position. And by the way, these are the last few days. Once Christmas comes and goes, once this week is over, week 16 ends, bada bing, bada bang, the promotion of a free bet up to $100. Free bet on a player prop site, prizepicks.com, our partners now for a year, trusted, we love them. And you get not only the free bet up to $100, you also get the daily fantasy course, the NFL DFS course that I have for 10+ hours of videos. It's an exclusive course, no other way to get in it, on how to become a better DFS player, on how to actually win money doing this, on how to make it maybe a little bit of a side hustle and take away the emotions from it that make you make the wrong decisions at the end of the day, right? So the things that matter, you get that course for free. It's a $100 value that if you actually wanted to go buy it and you didn't want it for whatever reason, you can go buy it for $100. But if you want it for free, the only way to actually do that ever, first time we're offering this until the end of the week, is over on PrizePicks using the code CLASS, CLASS. So you get those 2 benefits, free bet and a free course. Check it out. Not now, but right now. So now for the 49ers wide receivers, it's going to look good. I expect Debo to be insanely expensive. I'm going to be leaning to Brandon Ayuk here. Ayuk's coming off of a game where he played 98% of the snaps. He only ran 24 routes and had 2 targets, and he had a 36-yard catch. So he's coming off of a bad week. This kind of happened with George Kittle a couple weeks back, right? When we got George Kittle at $5,900 as a leverage play on a slate when everybody was playing cheap, shitty tight ends, right? And he popped off for 40+ points. This is an interesting spot because the usage for Ayuk has been fantastic. He is running insane routes. I'm watching the All-22. He looks fantastic. The usage is all there for him. He's been playing since week 8, 90% of the snaps. So he finally got over this little tiff. There was a report about it about 3 or 4 weeks ago that Ayuk, his communication wasn't the greatest. Kyle Shanahan didn't appreciate that. That's why he was in the doghouse for the first month and a half. But he's now seen 6 or more targets in 6 of his last 7 games. He has 10 or more fantasy points in 5 of his last 7 games. And I think we get the benefit with him coming off of a bad game and playing on the same team on a showdown slate with George Kittle, who's on another planet right now. And Debo, for the most part this year, continues to score rushing touchdowns, popped off to begin the year in the receiving game. I think he's going to be somewhat of an afterthought. If you get Brandon Ayuk in the 7 or 8K range, hammer that in my opinion. I'm going to like Brandon Ayuk a good amount this week in this game. Now, the guy who I think is going to be really expensive, I think Kittle will be expensive. I'm interested to see where Debo comes in. I'm expecting like a $9,500, $9,800 tag on Debo, somewhere in that range. If that's the case, it's a little bit fluky, maybe not fluky, but tough to get to. Now, he played 81% of the snaps last week. That's good. He ran 21 routes, so his routes finally came back up. He saw 5 targets. He had a good game in the receiving game. He ended up getting in on the ground yet again on the ground. I mean, this guy has 6 touchdowns in his last 5 games, 4 rushing touchdowns. That's eventually going to stop, but when is it going to stop? This is the number 1 rushing offense, the number 1 run blocking scheme in the NFL, and he is a weapon behind there. So we can't just automatically say he's not going to have success on the ground when his success has been insane on the ground. It's not going to go from insane to nothing. Now, his routes have remained decent, 20, 25, right? But the production is halted because Ayuk is back to maybe operating as the X receiver in this offense. Kittle has been on another planet over the last 3 weeks. Maybe the best overall player in football has been George Kittle these last 3 weeks. So it's going to stunt this. So if you get Debo Samuel in the upper 9K range or the 10K range, I'm probably halting on it. I'm probably leaning to go to Brandon Ayuk for the discount right now. I don't think Ayuk is going to be more expensive than Samuel. So this is going to be an interesting dichotomy to see where the price between Kittle and Debo is. Because right now, if Kittle comes in at like 10,200 and Debo's like 9,600, I'm just going to lean to Kittle. As for the other receivers on this team, I mean, Juwan Jennings is there, right? He ran 25. He played 25 snaps in week 15. He saw 6 targets on 15 routes. That target rate is not going to stand up. A 40% target rate, 6 targets on 15 routes is just not repeatable. So that production that he had, 3 catches, 28 yards, which is not great in its own right. The touchdown got him there. That production is not repeatable. When you run 15 routes, you're not going to see 6 targets, even if your name is Debo Samuel, right? Let alone Juwan Jennings. Now, he does have 11 targets over the last 2 games now, but the game before that, he ran 32 routes, right? 32 routes, double what he saw last week, and he saw 5 targets. That's more likely. A 20% target rate is more likely. It's more sustainable. Even that for Juwan Jennings might be a little bit high. So his 7 points in 3 out of his last 4 games, 2 of them because he's finding the end zone. I think we might see a little bit too priced up of a Juwan Jennings. Like if Juwan Jennings is in the 5K range, he's massively overpriced. $4,800 is where it's like, okay, do I want him or a kicker or a defense? That's where I can start looking at it more. But a 5K Juwan Jennings, massively overpriced for a guy not running running a lot of routes and just kind of getting, he's on the tail end in the opposite direction of where you want to be in terms of his production. It's probably going to regress a little bit back. And then the only other options out there, wide receiver 4 and 5, Travis Benjamin has 0 catches this year. He played 1 snap, no routes last week. Trent Sherfield played 5 snaps last week. He only has 3 catches since week 7 and 7 catches on the year. It would take just some weird broken coverage play downfield or somebody getting hurt. Juwan Jennings getting hurt because Jennings is running clearly ahead of him. So the other receiver's not really there. For tight ends, Ross Dwelly has played 1 snap in week 15. He's only ran 3 routes since Kittle has returned. He's not in play. Charlie Warner has had 1 reception in the last 6 weeks since Kittle returned after playing 13 snaps and running 2 routes in week 15. He's not in play. George Kittle is obviously in play. I mean, the man has been on an absolute tear. 28 receptions over the last 3 weeks, scoring 42, 37, and 15 DraftKings points, just missing the 100-yard bonus with a 6-catch, 93-yard performance on 6 targets last week, playing, oh baby, 97% of the snaps, 55 of the team's 57. He now has 15 or more DraftKings points in 6 of his last games. He is going to be expensive. I want to see how expensive. Is he going to hit the 10K range? I'm interested in seeing this. I'm interested in seeing on this slate who could potentially be more expensive than George Kittle. I don't think the quarterbacks can. Maybe just Deebo Samuel, right? So if George Kittle's like $11,000, it starts to become oof. I mean, the guy was just a $7,000 price tag on the last main slate. I think there's a chance he could hit the 11K range on this slate, believe it or not. But as we go through Tennessee, the injuries that they're dealing with, nobody's going to be more expensive than on Tennessee. I don't think his quarterback is going to be more expensive than him. So it's either George Kittle or Deebo. My guess it's going to be George Kittle at like maybe the most expensive price tag at like $10,400, $10,600, and then a Deebo somewhere around like $9,800 to $9,600. If that's the case, if it's $1,000 difference, then I start to go to Deebo Samuel. If it's less than $1,000, like a $400 difference, I'm going to lean to George Kittle. But again, the nice funny thing about this is we don't know the salaries as of this recording, so you're going to get to see as you're looking at the salaries my thought process and how you should translate that. So I like this little strategy, little experiment. So that's the San Francisco 49ers side of the ball. So now we can move to the Tennessee side of the ball. And by the way, if you want the projections for this, I do player projections. I projected their ownership, which is extremely important, a lineup optimizer, a Discord, rankings, game-by-game notes, the 5 notes that I'm using for this I'll throw up on Patreon as well, 5 pages of notes for every single player who will be in play. You can check that all out down below on patreon.com/Sal_Vetri_. There's a link in the description, so you don't got to remember that all. Get yourself for this holiday season right now, Patreon. Get up in there, improve your game, and come on in. Come on in, and when you come in, we'll say, hey, welcome home, welcome to the family. To the Tennessee Titans now. And by the way, the kickers and the defenses all in play on this slate. You'll see which ones I like a little bit more. I'll usually lean to go to the cheaper kicker, depending on it. I mean, at this point, their team totals are both low, pretty close. The defenses in lower total games is actually not as good, believe it or not, especially when both starting quarterbacks are in there. Defenses are going to be in play, though. But if they're like some 5K price tags, I'll lean to go to the kickers. So that being said, we don't need much more analysis there. The Tennessee Titans, Ryan Tannehill up top. It's been a tough season for Ryan Tannehill. I mean, it hurts when you're down Derrick Henry, who fuels the play action passing game. Anthony Firkser takes a step backwards at the tight end position, a little bit due to injuries, but in general, not great. And then your 2 receivers, I mean, you've been 7 games out of Julio Jones. He's left 3 with injury, and he's been limited in 2 because of injury. And A.J. Brown's been out for a while. Now, A.J. Brown was activated designated to return off IR. He has 21 days to return. I don't think he's going to return by Thursday. There's a chance, but it's a very slim chance, but we'll see as the week goes on. So the expectation with Julio Jones not practicing Monday with this hamstring injury that he just retweaked, the expectation is he doesn't get back in a short week. A.J. Brown isn't playing in time in a short week. And Ryan Tannehill's top 3 receivers are Nick Westbrook, Cody Hollister, Chester Rogers. That is brutal. And then to make matters worse, he has the number 30 pass blocking offensive line against the number 12 49ers run pass rush right now. The Nick Bosa's up front, right? Their secondary is about average, so it's not great. 228 yards per game on 32 attempts per game. This is not looking good. He ranks 26th in deep attempts and 34th in deep attempt accuracy. It's going to hurt when your offensive line has not been good in blocking for you, but he has taken a step back as well. Now, he only has this year 2 games of multi-touchdown passing. Only 2 games of over 300 yards, and he only had 1 since week 2. The upside for Ryan Tannehill here is not great, and when you factor in the pass catchers that he's throwing to, it looks even worse. So unless we get an $8,000 price range tag on Ryan Tannehill, it's tough for me to prioritize him over Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, let's say Garoppolo is $9,800 this week. Look at the weapons he's throwing to. Ayuk, Deebo, Kittle. I mean, even just the yards after the catch alone can propel him to a 240, 50-yard game and 2 touchdowns. It's difficult to see that for Ryan Tannehill. So if you get a very low price tag, like an $8,800 Tannehill, a quarterback at that cheap of a price point who is a little bit mobile and who is a veteran, yes, I can go to that. But anything in like the mid to upper 9K range to the 10K range, I'm leaning Jimmy G. Like if there's a less than $1,000 difference to get to Jimmy G, I'm going to lean to go there. Next up is this 3-headed backfield for the Tennessee Titans. Deontay Foreman is by far and away the leader here. He played 31 snaps, though, and this is the thing. Like, he's the leader, but he only played 39% of the snaps. It's a fucking 3-headed backfield, a backfield that they're probably going to need some pass catchers in as an underdog in this game. Now, that being said, even though it's a three-headed backfield based on snaps, Foreman still saw 22 opportunities on the ground and had over 100 yards for the second time in 3 games since there's been no Derrick Henry. He also added 3 targets and 2 receptions in that game. So now, in this specific game, though, Week 15, each of the 3 running backs saw 9 or more opportunities. 9 or more opportunities. Now, Foreman was the clear leader with 25 opportunities. He now has 15 or more opportunities in 3 straight games, 12 red zone opportunities over the last 3 games, and 13 or more fantasy points in those games, finishing with 13.2, 14.2, and 18.5 last week. So Foreman is that guy. He's coming off of this Achilles tear from years back, and he finally is getting an opportunity to go out there and ball. I think he's running as like number 7. He looks like a badass out there. So Foreman is the priority in this backfield, but not if he's like a $9,000 and $8,000 player, because this, as underdogs in this game, with a tough matchup against the 49ers defensive line and a better matchup in the secondary for Tannehill and whichever receivers are going to be out there at this point, it's a situation where you can easily see Foreman see 12 carries for 50 yards, and then you're just sitting there holding your hands like, what happened here? Because he's not going to be the primary pass catcher. So Foreman is in play if the price tag is nice. I'm hoping like a 6 or 7K at most Foreman. But these other 2 running backs start to come and play a little bit more. Dontrell Hilliard, who ran the former Cleveland Brown, he ran 17. Shout out the orange hoodie with the Browns, the Madness hoodies right here. All the prices, all the payments towards these hoodies go directly to helping people with their mental health, their mentals. If you're interested in that, you can reach out to me. I'll shoot you a link to where you can get that. But Dontrell Hilliard, he played 36% of the snaps last week. He ran 17 routes. The problem is he split his routes with McNichols. McNichols, who came back and made some really nice yards after the catch misses, looked elusive. So Hilliard ran 17 routes, McNichols 12 routes. That's your concern. Your concern is that even when they get down in a game like they're projected to by Vegas in this one, if they get down the Titans, they're running 2 dudes out there to run routes. I mean, hell, even Foreman in this game, he ended up running his own 6 routes. So they're running 2 dudes primarily out there. Hilliard seems to be the primary guy running it, but it could just be that McNichols is trying to get back up to speed for his job. And in these last 2 games for Dontrell Hilliard, it hasn't looked good since McNichols has returned. Like he had 3 weeks ago when there was no McNichols out there. McNichols is out. He has like a 60-yard rushing touchdown, and that propels his week forward to a 21-point fantasy day. But since then, you're getting 1 fantasy point 2 weeks ago, less than 10 last week. So it's really difficult to see this looking fantastic for Hilliard. I mean, if anything, if McNichols comes in as the cheapest running back here, he's the one that I would choose over Hilliard. Like if Hilliard's like 5,200 and McNichols is 4,600, I'm going to go to McNichols because he's seeing a very similar role. 30% of the snaps to 36% of the snaps in the last game. He ended up seeing 9 opportunities to 15 for Hilliard, but the routes run was very similar for the 2 of these dudes, even though it led to his 6 targets versus 3 targets. The routes run looked really good. McNichols looked good in his own right. And if anything, I think maybe there's a chance that he's running back from injury so we can see the snap count go up even more. Now, that being said, it's a 3-headed backfield. You have to kind of guess your game script. I'm completely fine not getting to this backfield. Both of these backfields are pretty murky and weird. I would rank it right now, assuming that we get a cheap McNichols, Foreman, McNichols, and Hilliard. Wide receiver position, we kind of touched on A.J. Brown. I don't think he's going to play in this one. We'll have to see. If he does play, yeah, he's going to look good. You're probably going to get a slight price discount. He might actually be one of the most expensive guys in the slate. Still think Kittle and Debo are up there. Julio, tough to get there. He did not practice on Monday. He tweaks his hammy. He played through it a little bit. Probably not good for him. First play of the game should have been a touchdown for the Titans. He gets by the coverage. There's no safety help, and Tannehill gets sacked, doesn't see him. And then he has an end zone target. Other than that, though, Julio this year, 7 games, has left 3 with injury and has been limited in 2. You've only seen a fully healthy Julio Jones for the first 2 weeks of the season, and one in which he had his best game for close to 20 DraftKings points. But now I'm not expecting Julio to play with a hamstring. He did not practice on Monday. It's not looking good. So what does this leave you with? We mentioned it earlier. Nick Westbrook and Cody Hollister on the outsides, and in the slot, Chester Rogers. It's hard not to like Nick Westbrook on a showdown slate. I'm hoping we don't get an $8,000 range Nick Westbrook, but if we can get like a 6K range Nick Westbrook, hard not to like the dude, right? He played 89% of the snaps last week once Julio went down. He has seen only 3 targets per game, but that's skewed because games this year, Julio's been out there. They've been running more with Derrick Henry. AJ's been out there. So over his last 4 games with no AJ Brown and mainly Julio Jones getting back or being out, he's seen 23 targets, operating as the wide receiver 1, 16 catches, 195 yards, and a touchdown. Now, he hasn't topped 72 air yards since week 4, so his upside is very much limited. Ryan Tannehill is not getting the time by his offensive line to hit guys deep, so we have to get a somewhat affordable Nick Westbrook here. Like, I expect Westbrook in this game to see a 6 or 8 target game, but it can easily end for 5 catches, 50 yards. That's a good 10 fantasy points, not if you're 8K. If you're 5 to 6K, we like that. Chester Rogers is a hard dude to like. I mean, he's kind of splitting this slot role, believe it or not, with Racey McMath, who's running like 5 to 10 routes over the last couple of weeks, and Chester Rogers himself is not running many routes. I mean, 15, 13, and 11 routes these last 3 weeks after in week 11 running 45 routes. It seems like they're just getting tired with the undrafted free agent out of Grambling State, the 2016 undrafted free agent, who's not great. I mean, he has slow speed for a slot receiver. He's 6 foot, 185 pounds, so no real speed, upside burst, no yards after to the catch ability, no size to him. So a guy like this who's not getting targeted downfield would need to be peppered with targets. But it's really difficult to see a guy get peppered with targets when you're only running 15 routes a fucking week, right? Now, last week runs 15 routes, 4 catches, 30 yards on 4 targets. Those 7 fantasy points, if you're like $4,000, are decent. I just think he overproduced. I think his production is more likely to be week 12, where he sees 11 routes and 3 targets. Week 14, where he sees 13 routes and 1 target on 25% of the snaps. His snaps aren't going up. He's not playing injured. He's just kind of splitting this role. They're going more 2 wide receiver sets to run more with double tight ends. You're seeing 3 tight ends run routes more. So the slot receiver is off the field more. And when he is on the field, he's somewhat splitting it with Racey McMath, believe it or not. So I'm not really there in Chester Rogers. Cody Hollister is another dude. He saw a bump, 70% of the snaps last week. 2 targets with Julio out. Routes go up to 22 routes. I'll be interested to see the price tag here. If they mess this up and give you like a $2,000 Cody Hollister, $3,000 Cody Hollister, go for it. If it's 5 or 6K Cody Hollister, no. 4K, yeah, you can talk me into it. I do not think Cody Hollister is good. He's had a couple of games this year where he's gotten to operate as the wide receiver 2 in the offense or so. Week 12, right? No Julio, 19 routes, 4 targets. He has 4 fantasy points. Not great. This is not a good fantasy player. He's not a good player in general. He's 6'3", 214 pounds. He's good size, but he's already 28 years old. The undrafted free agent is 28 years old. He's bottom 10 percentile in all of his athletic measures in terms of burst, agility, athletic, balance, strength. Like, this is not a good guy in terms of getting separation, especially when the quarterback is struggling. In week 14, he saw 20 routes and 1 target. In week 15, he saw 22 routes and 2 targets. So I'm going to expect around 20 routes, assuming Julio and A.J. Brown are out. Those 20 routes are more than likely going to lead to around 2 targets. If he's not scoring a touchdown and he's not getting downfield separation, those 2 targets are going to probably translate to, at best, 2 catches for 20 yards, 4 fantasy points, which is, again, I'm hoping they make a mistake and keep him below that 4K range. Only other receiver on the slate is Racey McMath, who I mentioned. He played 22 snaps. He ran 9 routes, a season high last week, but he only has 1 short target so far this year and 1 catch. So not something that I'm really that interested in getting to Racey McMath. You get to the tight ends to close out this slate. And by the way, if you're still here, little subscribe button pops up as we continue to finish out the year strong. Appreciate a lovely year. Happy holidays to everybody out there. You all rock so much. 3 tight ends. We mentioned that they're running more 2 tight end sets, which is limiting the slot usage. 3 tight ends are seeing a bunch of usage right now. I mean, Anthony Firsker is a name you're going to know. He's probably going to be the most expensive guy. His coach just called him 2 weeks ago a mainly special teams player, and it's translating. The dude has only topped 17 routes once since week 2. He's been basically running 12 to 15 routes a week. Now, he ran 15 routes last week. It led to 2 targets, 2 catches, 19 yards. Like, that's his upside at this point. Over his last 4 games, he has had 12 catches, 86 yards, and 15 targets. So that's pretty good. 12 catches over his last 4 games. But then you break it down, and he's averaging 3 catches a week for 22 yards a week on like 4 targets, right? So he's basically coming out there and getting you a 4 or 5 point performance. If he's in the 4 or 5K range, no, give me a kicker or defense. If he's in the 2 to 3K range, sure, I can go there. He's on the field enough, playing 20 snaps or so. But I would rather go to Jeff Swaim, assuming that they're similar in price. Jeff Swaim is not running a ton of routes, but he's just on the field way more. I mean, he's been playing 70+% of the snaps. He's been playing 59 snaps last week to Anthony Firsker's just 17 snaps. That's how much of a difference. Jeff Swaim is on the field more, but he's just not running as many routes. He's also running the exact same amount of routes. 14 routes last week led to 1 catch, 5 yards on 2 targets. So he's blocking a little bit more, but at least he's on the field more. Like, if you're going to ask me, hey, Sal, which guy would you rather have? The guy who's playing 70% of the snaps and running 15 routes lately, or the guy who's running 15 routes and playing 40% of the snaps? I guess you can say, oh, but if that guy's snaps increase, he'll run more routes. So maybe Firsker could be the sneaky play now that I'm talking out loud and talking through it with you people. But I just think that there's a better chance that once they get down in games and they stop running as much like this one projects for, the guy who's on the field for 70% of the time in Jeff Swaim, who's a more than capable pass catcher, I think there's an easier chance that, hey, I'm already on the field. I'll just start running a little bit more. Hey, I can chip and then go out for passes. So I'll lean to Swaim there. The problem that starts to become as to why the slot receivers don't look good for the Titans, and neither of these 2 tight ends look like better plays than they should be, is because Michael Pruitt, who's mainly a pass-blocking tight end and a run-blocking tight end, he's blocking more now since they're running so much. 27 snaps last week. He ran 11 routes, saw a target. He's basically playing 45 snaps or 45% of the snaps this year. He's running about 10 routes per game, but those have been coming up a little bit lately as they continue to run. So if the game script goes a way where the San Francisco 49ers are leading, expect Michael Pruitt to come off the field more, expect 1 tight end to be out there, and Chester Rogers to go into the slot a little bit more. So that's kind of the experiment that you can run here. Then expect Deontay Foreman to come off the field for McNichols and Hilliard to go on some more. But if the Titans are leading in the game script, or it's a neutral game script, you're going to get what you got last week, where Foreman is trying to touch the ball 20 times on the ground. The other running backs are mixed in, and it's a lot of 2 tight end sets. So there's your breakdown for the Thursday Night Football slate. Hopefully this was very informative. Hopefully we put all the little information grabs up on the screen so you had something to reference as we discussed through it. But I appreciate you tuning in. Again, this is the final week to get for free. Even if you think you're going to take it, you take it at your own time, 10+ hours of DFS course. It is very, very important if you're somebody who wants to try and make money at DFS. It is a very important course in my opinion. So you can check it out. You get that and a free bet up to $200 if you use the code CLASS on prizepicks.com. That is CLASS, CLASS, to get the free $100 bet and the free DFS course on my end. And if you already have an account, then tell your mother, your brother, your sister, your aunt to make an account and use that code CLASS so you can get the course for yourself this holiday season. Treat yourself. Why not, for free? Thank you for tuning in, everybody. I'll see you when I see you. We'll have Saturday football content, Friday final thoughts, and then I'll see you all in the next one.